For 2 billion years, Earth was home to nothing bigger than a single cell. Here's what happened to it. 1. Hook. Imagine a world that's 2 billion years old. Not 2 million, not 200,000. 2 billion years. And for that entire stretch of time, the most advanced inhabitant of this planet was a single microscopic cell that didn't even have a nucleus. No eyes to see with, no brain to think with. Not a single creature bigger than the dot at the end of this sentence. To put that in perspective, if we compress the entire history of Earth into one 24-hour day, complex life animals, plants, anything with more than one cell wouldn't show up until 9 p.m. at night. That means for nearly 20 hours straight, our planet was a silent, monotonous world of microbes. Some scientists would even call it mind-numbingly boring. But behind that boredom, something far more dramatic was actually happening, and we're about to find out why. 2. Background. When the first life appeared on Earth around 3.8 billion years ago, it immediately ran into a massive problem. How do you become something more than a single cell floating in a primordial ocean? The answer, it turns out, wasn't simple at all. These early cells, called prokaryotes, had no nucleus, no specialized organelles, and most importantly, no way to organize and cooperate with other cells. They were essentially tiny individuals, each fighting to survive on their own. Evolving into a multicellular organism, a creature made of many cells working together, required a leap far more complicated than most people assume. Cells had to learn to communicate with each other, divide up labor, and, hardest of all, sacrifice individual independence for the survival of the group. In other words, evolution isn't just about getting bigger. It's about rewriting the fundamental rules of how life operates. And as it turns out, nature needed 2 billion years to crack this problem. 3. Unique insight. Here's where things get interesting. During those 2 billion years, Earth was anything but quiet. In fact, this was one of the most revolutionary periods in the chemical history of our planet, even though not a single creature was around to witness it. About 2.4 billion years ago, a group of tiny bacteria called cyanobacteria developed an ability that would change everything: photosynthesis. They started absorbing sunlight and carbon dioxide, then releasing something that, at the time, was actually a deadly poison to almost every form of life on Earth: oxygen. Yep, the very oxygen we breathe every second of every day used to be toxic waste. Scientists call this event the Great Oxidation Event, and its effects were almost apocalyptic. Most microbes living at the time couldn't survive in an oxygen-rich environment. They went extinct on a scale that, if it happened today, would be called the largest mass extinction in Earth's history. But here's the interesting lesson. What was a disaster for one form of life turned out to be an open door for another. Organisms that could actually use oxygen, not just survive it, thrived. And this ability to harness oxygen became, millions of years later, one of the key foundations for the rise of complex life. 4. Step-by-step explanation. So how exactly did this single-celled world eventually become a world full of fungi, plants, insects, and eventually humans? The process unfolded gradually, and each stage took an amount of time that, by human standards, feels almost impossible. First, around 2 billion years ago, a new type of cell appeared, the eukaryote, a cell with a nucleus and specialized internal structures. Scientists believe this cell formed through a process called endosymbiosis. One cell swallowed another, but instead of digesting it, the two ended up living together inside a single body. One famous example is the mitochondria, the energy-producing structures inside our cells believed to have once been independent bacteria. In other words, one of the most important evolutionary leaps in the history of life didn't come from competition. It came from an accidental partnership between two organisms that were supposed to be predator and prey. Second, it took more than another billion years before these eukaryotic cells learned to live together permanently, forming colonies then tissues, and eventually true organisms with multiple cells sharing different jobs. No wonder this process is considered one of the biggest mysteries in evolutionary biology. Why did something that sounds, in theory, so simple take so unbelievably long? One answer scientists point to has to do with atmospheric oxygen levels. Supporting large, active organisms requires far more oxygen than a single cell needs. And it just so happens that Earth's atmospheric oxygen didn't reach a high enough threshold until around 800 to 600 million years ago, right before the explosion of complex life known as the Cambrian explosion. Besides that, there's also the factor of extreme climate. Several times in its history, Earth went through periods called snowball Earth, when nearly the entire surface of the planet, oceans included, froze solid. Strange as it sounds, some scientists believe these extreme freezes actually pushed evolution forward, because only the most adaptable organisms survived once the ice finally melted. 5. Case study, example. One of the most fascinating pieces of evidence from this 2 billion year period comes from fossils discovered in Gabon, West Africa, dating back about 2.1 billion years. These fossils show structures resembling simple, multicellular organisms far earlier than anyone expected. This discovery genuinely surprised the scientific community because for decades, experts believed multicellular life didn't really develop until around 600 million years ago. At the same time, the Gabon fossils suggest that nature's experiments with multicellularity may have begun much earlier. It's just that most of those experiments failed and vanished without a trace. This gives us a much more realistic picture of evolution, not a neat straight line from simple to complex, but more like millions of parallel experiments, most of which hit dead ends, with only a few eventually succeeding and paving the way for life as we know it today. Another example comes from ancient red algae fossils, about 1.6 billion years old, found in India among the oldest evidence of complex eukaryotic organisms ever discovered. These fossils show a fairly organized cell structure, complete with signs of chloroplast, proof that the experiment of complex life was quietly underway long before the world was actually ready for it. 6. Closing. Looking back, those 2 billion years of single-celled life weren't some empty or failed chapter in Earth's history. Quite the opposite, this was the most important preparation period there ever was. Without cyanobacteria transforming the atmosphere, without endosymbiosis merging two different life forms into one, without millions of failed evolutionary experiments, the complex world we know today, with its forests, animals, and humans watching this video right now, might never have existed. All this slow, invisible progress wasn't wasted. It's the foundation of everything. So the next time you feel like your own progress in life is moving too slowly, maybe it's worth remembering that even life on Earth needed 2 billion years just to learn how to work together. If the universe can be that patient, maybe we can afford to be a little more patient with ourselves too.